Okay, so here they are. Here are the bees.
I just want to sit and relax a minute, and then I'm going to take that sugar water back to the garage. And I enjoy watching them bring that pollen in. If they're bringing pollen in, you know they're satisfied and they're going to stay. A lot of people like to lock the queen up for 3 days, but I feel the quicker you put them in there, the queen's going to stay with her frames anyways. And the bees are going to stay wherever the queen is. So if the queen doesn't leave, if she doesn't like a hive, she's going to leave regardless if you left it there 3 days or not. If she doesn't like that hive, she's going to look elsewhere, and they'll just abscond out somewhere else. And so far, I've never had, every time I try to put them in a hive, they've always stayed. Maybe a little different with the killer bees, I don't know. They've got accustomed to being back there for a couple of years, so. This is funny seeing all the bees accumulating around that door, though.
I know, you'd almost think they were robbing, but we know they're not.
Yeah, they're not robbing because they'd be fighting to the death. Because they'll ball each other up and sting each other to death. And then you've got a bunch of dead bees because once the stinger's out of them, they're done.
So this is how we spend most of our days now.
Only when we've got time for breaks. We've got other things going on too. Tomorrow I got to pull that cement mixer out so I can mix up my soil for my garden. Take all the weeds out of it and everything else.
And you'll want to see how Clay does his garden, because it's a non-watering, non-weeding, not 100%, but for the most part, right, dear?
It's a bucket system.
You can see some of our old videos if you're curious. Every year we perfect our beekeeping, our little farming skills, our all the little things we learn.
It's experimental. I mean, you just do what you can. If you find something you can do better. That's why I went to the cement mixer. I used to mix all the soil and for the buckets in the wheelbarrow with a hoe and pick the weeds out of it. But I'll tell you, by the end of the day, your shoulders were killing you. You might as well just rototilled. But when the cement mixer is doing all the work, you can put your garden in a little in no time. Most of my work is just picking the old root systems and the stems and stuff out of the buckets. I may have to put some new neti cups in the bottom of some of them buckets, and I may have to put the ones I don't have time to put neti cups in. I'll have to, they're already drilled out, I'll have to make a wick so it wicks the water up into the bucket from the water trough. But you'll see all that when I get that video up. Wow, these guys are loaded with pollen. Look at them coming in. Some of them got nectar and the other ones got pollen.
It's funny to watch them all fly, because some of them, because they're not used to their house, are a little bit all over.
Well, these two are. These two are.
Yeah, these two guys know they're home. But the other guys are like a little...
Number 3 and number 4, 2 days they'll be flying in and out like these guys. So right now they're just orientating themselves to the area, flying around 6-7 yards and then flying back.
Does the honey badger like?
Honey badger don't care.
Honey badger just don't care. I'm a honey badger and so is Clay. We just don't care. That's what we always say to each other when life gets tough, but I tell that to my friends. Honey badger. But wait, a honey badger, he goes in and eats honey from the honeycombs. Bears eat honey. Skunks eat honey, right? How about mice?
Yes. Mice will tear your hive apart. They're terrible.
Who else eats honey that we can think of? All those murder hornets. Do they eat honey or what do they do?
They eat the bees, actually. They're carnivorous. They're not... Oh, excuse me. They're not really for the honey. They're after the bees themselves. They'll wipe out a whole colony. If you find you have a murder hornet laying in your hive, you need to kill it right away before it goes back to its nest and alerts the other bees where the food source is.
Or maybe we'll make this correction. Call your game warden and find out if you can kill it. Because I'm not sure what the legalities are in each state.
What, the Asian hornet?
Yeah.
They're tracking down the Asian hornet and destroying the nests.
Okay, because I'm not sure what the, you know, some of these things, it's kind of weird.
The European hornet is a native of us now.
Yeah, native to New York.
They're still invasive creatures, but you gotta watch to see which ones you got.
And it's kind of weird because
they almost look alike.
We used to have peacocks here, and somebody thought that you have to have licenses and things like that. It's, you know, some of you guys are like me. I came from the suburbs, and I guess if they're in your state, what's the story on like quail and things like that? Because it just sounds backwards to me.
If they're a U.S. bird or animal, you can't keep them as pets. You have to have a special permit through the game wardens. It's like having a baby deer. You can't have baby deer. You're not supposed to.
Yeah, you have to, some things you have to have license.
Not supposed to have raccoons or skunks or any of that because they're native to U.S. But peacocks are native of India. So you can have peacocks because they're not a U.S. bird.
Yeah, some of these things are really weird, but then like you have to have.
Same with quail or other.
Well, like pheasants, you can have some pheasants you can have and some you can't.
You can't have Chinese ringneck.
Yeah, but you can have a golden pheasant, right? If I'm correct.
They're called ornamental.
You got to check. You got to check with your game warden if you're having doubt. And then some places we've talked about this a lot. You can't have roosters in the city, but you can have hens. A lot of people like to raise rabbits because they're quiet. You know, if they're going to do something, and sometimes quail because it's not quite. It's a little just a different.
The quail, the only ones that make noise are the males.
Yeah.
And you can't tell the sound of them from regular wild birds. But you can have button quail. You can have, Hornet quail, because they're all from Africa and Asia.
Yeah, so if you decide you want to keep an animal...
You can't have bobwhite quail, because they're native to the U.S.
So if you see things, I'm not sure, most people can keep bees, especially if you're in rural, but if you're in a city, I don't know what the laws are.
Bees are livestock.
Yeah, they're considered livestock.
People in the city have bees. Don't you remember watching some of them videos where the bees swarmed and you're on the power lines?
Oh, okay, okay.
They had to have the
some people actually...
fire department come to... They call the fire department, and then the fire department calls beekeepers to come and take the bees off the power lines.
And some people actually keep bees on top of rooftops in cities even. It's pretty interesting. And everybody thinks they're an expert.
Nobody's an expert. The bees are the experts.
So basically, I think for the
anybody knows what's going on, it's the bees.
I think you want to mimic in nature as much as possible to have the most success. So don't you think so?
I think so.
I think your odds are better.
You don't tell the bees what they're going to do. They're going to tell you what to do.
And the thing is you can see how different things are raised, but but you want to like see how long someone's been doing something. I think that has a lot to do with it too. Like some people, they might do something and like when you're starting to ask questions, it's just a good thing to learn. You're always learning. You're never, and there are new scientific developments and things, but you just,
Well, you might be wondering when I'm going to put another box on top of the frames. You have to keep an eye on your bees. You should be at least in there once a week, if not every 4 days or so, because things change real fast with these things. So you might want to keep an eye on them. And when you see right now they've got 5 frames full. And when you get out of a 10 frame hive, you want to at least get 7 full frames before you add another box.
So those bottom ones have 5 frames. The top one is where they're feeding right now.
The bottom ones have 10 frames.
Oh, I'm sorry, 10 frames. I'm sorry. And
but only 5 are full. They're building up on the other empty frames. They're building wax on so that she can lay eggs, and they can bring in more pollen and nectar.
Show them how, or tell everybody how the inside out, how it kind of goes in the hive, because they're new. The
2 outside frames are usually honey frames. And the next one in from those 2 are usually nectar, honey, and pollen. And then these 6 that are in the middle are where the queen lays her brood. So if you get the 2 outside honey frames are getting full and they've got plenty of pollen on those other 2 frames, you've got 6 frames in the center. You want to make sure you keep an eye on them. Because once they start getting full, she's going to be making, if she doesn't have anywhere else to go to lay eggs, she's going to swarm on you.
And actually, when I think about it, we have not lost any bees since we started beekeeping, because we didn't know there's still bees in the last one.
We did get 1 swarm. They left our swarm and went in that tree.
But we got them.
We did get them.
So we haven't lost any bees. We're in the north, and we've wintered them over, what, 2 or 3 winters now? But
well, more than that now, because it was 2016 when I got the bees, or 17.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We thought we lost our bees, but they were still in there, right? From the construction, but it's just the way that it happened. But the thing is you can't get greedy, and you've got to take your time, and you've got to be gentle.
If you're only doing the bees for the honey, you're gonna have swarms, because you're not paying much attention to what's going on in the hive. I'm not in it for the honey. I'm in it to build the hives up so that they can get through the winter and they can pollinate our flowers and our trees. If they have extra honey, you'll take a frame or 2 for yourself, because in the fall when the goldenrod comes on, they'll be bringing in more pollen and making more honey and stuff for the winter. So if we take any honey at all, it'll most likely be in probably August, end of August or 1st of September. So it gives them a chance for the end of September and October, when the goldenrod comes on, they'll be able to build it all back up for the winter. And then we won't take any more till spring. They still got a lot of honey supplies in the spring. We'll take a few more frames so that they got more room to put more honey.
And you got to be careful making nukes, because you can make tons and tons of nukes, but if you weaken the hive too much, the winter's the big part. That's the part.
Well, you don't make nukes in the winter anyways.
No, but I mean, if you weaken the hive too much before winter, what do you think?
If you weaken the hive too much, it takes a long time for them to build them back up. But you could, in the spring, you can take probably 1 nuke out of each one of your hives. Sometimes 2, depending on how heavy the population is.
I mean, you can get more risky if you've been doing it for a long time.
And if you've taken most of the bees for nukes, they think they've swarmed, and they'll go back into, the queen will go back into laying mode. And
it's not a bad thing.
And you take your queen out of your hive, take the queen away from them. As long as they've got a queen cell in there that they can build a new queen, you can put the queen and a whole mess of her workers in a new nuke box, so that you could build another hive.
But I think if you go...
Or if you're selling nukes, you'll want to take some frames with a queen cell, so you've got a fresh new queen. But you have to do it so the queen hatches out, and she's got 4 or 5 days to go through her mating flight, and then check her before you sell the nuke. Make sure she's laying eggs. There's a lot to it, but
yeah, definitely.
It's definitely enjoyable.
Not for everybody, but, and there's a lot to learn.
I mean, I'm no pro, but
we enjoy it.
What I do, I know what I'm doing for the bees.
But it's not wrong if you are using it to help feed your family and stuff. Just don't get too...
Because I'm sure there's beekeepers out there that are telling me I'm doing everything wrong. But
we're all learning. Everybody's learning. What was it?
So far, I don't think I've done anything wrong. They all seem to be very healthy, and they're building their brood up more. Once these first 2 boxes, the brood hatches out, there's going to be like 3 times more bees. Plus, there's going to be more space for the queen to lay her eggs. Because as soon as the bee hatches, the first thing that bee does is it cleans out its cell that it was in. And then it becomes a nurse bee, takes care of the other babies.
Well, another thing too is if you're interested in getting into bees, you might want to look at your agricultural site or whatever. Because I think it's New York, because we just looked at it just curious, because we want to learn everything about bees. I think they give like $10,000 grants to people that study bees, but you have to sell like $1,000 worth of stuff, and they're going to want reports and everything. But, you know, if that's something that might help their bee thing, right?
If you think that's what you want to get into.
If you're into that type of thing, you know. But, you know, we're just doing it for our personal use. We don't sell anything. We don't do
I'm doing
anything.
it for my personal entertainment.
Yeah, we enjoy it. Clay and I are a bit of scientists. We like to see how long can we keep the bees going, how healthy can we make them be, right? And what can we do to make it better beekeepers?
If you do as much as you can for them, and you can get them through the winter, you know, that's what I mainly want to make sure I can get them through the winter. They have to have enough pollen. They have to have enough honey to get them through the winter.
I think one of the secrets to your success is that you don't wrap them like the bees that are like the chickens in the barn. You know, like the drafts kill the chickens. You don't heat your barn, and Clay doesn't do anything to the hives. He just leaves them out. And
well, it's kind of foolish to be wrapping.
And we're in New York.
It's like if you wrap them with insulation in that, all you're doing is keeping the heat inside the hive where they sweat. And when they sweat, it goes, if that can't ventilate itself, you're going to have moisture, and the moisture is what kills the bees.
I mean, think about, what does a bee do in the wild?
They cluster up around the queen to keep her warm, and they eat the honey. They survive the winter in an old hollow tree or an old doghouse or an old barn. They don't have anybody wrapping them up with insulation and plastic. I think that's foolish, because they've got no way to breathe, or the hive doesn't have a way to breathe.
And maybe I'll throw this out for what it's worth too. If you ever get honeybees in your house, call a beekeeper to take them out.
Yeah, don't call an exterminator.
We don't do anything like that, but
there's people out there that'll come in and
They'll gladly take your
Take your
swarms, yeah, because they just add them to their hives. But it's just better for the bees and to keep them going, you know. But a lot of times when people think are honeybees, I think are wasp and carpenter bees. They just see that and think that's what it is. And a honeybee guy will not take that out.
And if you see a dead bee out front of your hive, or they drag a bee out of their hive, and don't get all upset, because they're probably older bees. They don't live that long. They only live long enough to, 45 or maybe a little longer, 45 days. And as they die, the other bees will drag them out of the hive. You got to remember, these things, from the day they hatch to the day they die, they're constantly working.
Just like women, they're all females.
They are all females.
And a woman's work is never done.
Except for the drones. Drones don't have a stinger. Their only job is to mate with the queen. And usually in October, the worker bees will take them drones and drag them out of the hive and throw them on the ground.
Now the boys are gone.
They evict the boys in the fall.
That
way they don't have to feed them all winter. The queen will make new drones in the spring.
And the regular bee has various jobs through her lifetime too.
Yeah.
She doesn't always do the same thing.
They start out as a nurse bee, then a worker bee, and when they get to be older, just about the time before they're ready to die, they'll become a guard bee. Because a guard bee has to sacrifice itself to protect the hive. So the older bees aren't afraid to die because of it, so they'll protect the hive.
So what does the guard bee do?
They stand at the entrance and only allow their sisters into the hive. Believe me, they can tell by the scent, the pheromones.
Okay, guys, with that, remember...
Hopefully you learned a little bit today.
Yes.
And remember, big or small, you too could be a backyard farm. Join us again.